let's just start off with introductions. My name is Brent Peterson. I'm an e-commerce evangelist for Magento, and my co-host today is Jisse,
which is totally pronounced in the wrong way. So my name is Jisse Reitsma from the Netherlands. So in the Netherlands, it's hot, but we don't have burning forests and smoke because of that. And I'm owner of a little company called Yerio, mostly busy with training developers. That's kind of like a cool match with the format as well, right? With
yes.
the learning part and
yeah. So today's format, and again, Derek Harlick has been also a frequent co-host of this episode, but he is teaching, so he can't join us today because he's actually teaching Magento, which is a great thing to do. Yeah, so we were just talking about what we're going to talk, what since Magento has now morphed or migrated to Adobe Learning, we are going to come up with another name for our webinar. And I think that we kind of came up with this idea, or call it community interviews, and kind of going back and looking at some of the community members in Magento to see what they're doing now, and then how they've navigated this time that we've now gone into Adobe.
Yeah, and I think like the interesting aspect about that would be, well, basically the keyword change is all around. So it's all about Adobe slowly moving Magento elements into the Adobe ecosystem. Maybe also agencies and developers wondering like what's going to be next. So some people might see it as opportunities. Some other people are referring to it as the Armageddon. I don't know. But in general, I think like the thing is on the move. Everything is about change within this community currently. And it would be nice to refer back to the past and see like how experts that were full in the Magento ecosystem 5 years ago are doing currently, and are they still busy with Magento? Are they eager to dive into the Adobe community? Are they fed up with Magento? Are they doing something else? Yeah, it's just really interesting to see what they are doing.
Yeah, and then just to give everybody a little bit background, this webinar has gone from Ask the Masters, so we were pretty exclusive to just trying to interview Magento Masters, to Magento U office hours, to now Magento U open house, to what are we going to call it next? And so I think that
yeah, the renaming sessions.
Yeah, so I think that maybe we should just call it new name every month webinar.
Yeah. So basically then we can spend about 15 minutes at the beginning of every session coming up with yet another name.
Yes, yet another name. Yeah. I think that was the Yan.
Yeah, that sounds like a waste of everybody's time.
All right, let's go right into our agenda today. We are going to talk about now Magento U is officially part of Adobe Learning. We're going to just kind of go over a little bit about that. There is also everybody who has a Magento badge and a certification will have a new one now. So what does that mean for you as a developer, and certainly even as a merchant or an admin user? There's certifications for those people as well. The Adobe Developer Live, I think, event is what that should say, but hey, maybe it's all about our life too. Like, yeah. how are we doing? We are, if we have time, and we've already wasted, 10 minutes of our time, but we're going to just talk a little bit about Headless, and there's lots of things happening in the Headless community. We'll briefly go over what happened in Magento Association and talk about some of the events happening, including Reactacon, which I have really strong reactions to, and
Good or bad?
some of the Meet Magento events that are out there, and then we'll open it up for questions. So we have an action-packed agenda. We might be ambitious in what we're trying to do, but this is a great, this is just a great punch list of topics for us to go over.
And we're all going to squeeze it in 5 minutes.
Yes, exactly. And we can get this down to 30-second sound bites that'll last us for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. So so I guess from a Magento perspective, has it affected you at all, the sort of wrap up of Magento U and pushing it into Adobe Learning? Have you seen anything that's different in your world?
Well, not necessarily. So I see that. So personally, I'm not a Magento U trainer. First off, so I've never given Magento U official Magento U trainings, but always independent training. And I've seen some decline over the years. And I think that's simply also because all of the agencies that made the switch simply have made the switch. So they're developing in Magento 2. They've got their teams up and running, so they don't need further education. But since the switch over, I've been kind of like worried as well, like to see what agencies would be doing. Would they stop investing in Magento? But I think, like in general, that's not the case. So agencies are maybe awaiting what is next with Adobe, with the whole switch over. But they're still investing into it. They're still building Magento shops. They're still sitting there with all of those problems with developers that need to have new skills. New developers need to be trained. Yeah, so I think, like, from the training perspective, little has changed so far.
Yeah, I agree. You know, from the agency side, I think we saw a little bit of confusion on what is it, you know, what does that mean for what we need? There is a new level that, or there is something called an Adobe certified agency or something like that, where you have to have so many certifications to be certified, and they have one for Experience Manager, one for Magento. So there are specific certifications that agencies have to get in groups to get this this label. So I think that now that Adobe Learning has completely taken over Magento U, I think that'll help agencies in understanding what they need to do to get to that level. And certainly, whether you're doing Magento U training or you're just training developers individually, there's lots of opportunities from the developer level up to the agency level for learning and training today. And I think that as we're wrapping in more of these products, you know, for example, there's a new beta program out for Adobe Sensei. And Adobe Sensei is directly integrated into Magento Commerce, and that's just a small piece of some of those larger Magento or Adobe products that are going to be wrapped into the commerce part that will need training. And I think that what we're going to see down the line, you know, notwithstanding Headless, but we will see Experience Manager, you know, maybe some CMS coming directly from there and integrations in there, which would in turn need training on all those different products.
Yeah, and I think it's good to point out, actually, that this whole migration of the training program from Magento U into Adobe Learning is kind of like a big move for Magento/Adobe. It's kind of vital to make that move, because otherwise people will still refer to Magento not only as this open source project, but also as this company organizing all kinds of things, among which the U program. And I think it's kind of logical that they've made this attempt to change it over to Adobe Learning, which leads to a lot of people then thinking about that well, because it's now under a different department within Adobe, because it's in different hands, things dramatically change. But as you point out, there's kind of like a lot of at stake to make sure that Adobe is still investing in Adobe Learning all around that Magento ecosystem as well. So yeah, as we see it, there's going to be a lot of changes in the structure of this educational platform. But the materials are not going to change dramatically because, well, the materials are all about the software, and the software is still there. There's only more software coming up, so more training come up.
Yeah, exactly. And every version has new features, and versions have changes. And you know, just kind of going back, I think last month Peter Manichek was brought up again, just on the way he organized the community and getting content into Magento and having the community involved in that content. I know that we are going to still advocate for that approach. So I think Adobe is still working on how they're going to collect content, and I hope that they still go out to the community to help put that content into their learning.
Yeah. So a lot of things are changing, but the question on the slide is what does it mean? But I think on a practical level, there's a lot of switches in names of the certification. There's a lot of renaming being done, but on the educational level, I think like a lot of the training are still the same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right now, I think all the training is identical. It's just delivered in a different way. It's well, I mean, it's the same training delivered on a new platform.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and actually delivered by the same people. So, you know, for example, Derek is delivering training today, and VJ is delivering training, and I know Vinay has training coming up. So
all of these people should have been in this call, but they're all busy with training people.
Yeah, the nerve. Jeez.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of the confusion, of course, started with what was it? A couple of tweets or some messaging on social media, I believe, from Magento U about the certification and all of that, and that was just highly confusing. It was kind of like, I read the little messages that popped up. And that it got me scared as well at first. Once you realize actually that of course Adobe is not going to let go of all of the existing certified developers, it doesn't make sense for them to drop all of the certifications out of the blue. So I think it was more like a communication issue than that something real changed.
Yeah, that kind of goes into our next topic is those new certifications are really just the old certifications with a new label. And you don't actually lose out on your old certification. I do remember those tweets coming out, or the social media around. Does that mean that my certification now is either going to be expired in a year or something? And I think that they came back saying that no, that those certifications won't be expired and that they'll still be good.
Yeah, and actually, in the last couple of weeks, I received about 4 or 5 different emails from past students of myself that also had that same question. And basically, every time I needed to respond, kind of like a calming father, like, don't worry, everything is fine. It's going to still be okay. Just keep your certification, and it's going to be moved into something else, but that's going to be properly communicated.
Yeah, I appreciate that when I called you about that and I was crying and stuff, that you helped me.
Yeah, exactly. But Brent, you're not a past student, so.
Oh, all right.
Sorry.
Yeah. So you know, I basically there is new badges that everybody's going to get, and we should have had a slide with the badges, but
Mm.
regardless, you will see those out there now, and the Magento U badges will now be Adobe Learning badges.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so this is again the Adobe Developer Life, and I think it's Adobe Developer Live, which
Yeah,
is an
but we
event
still
coming up.
discuss the live as well, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. August, or I'm sorry, September 28th is the event.
yeah,
It's free for developers. Well, it's free for anybody that wants to join.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
um, and the the um the um the event is geared toward developers, though. It is a specific sort of like Mage Titans, where the topic was around development. It'll be interesting to go to that event to see how it differs from some of your Magento events.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm trying to recall if Magento ever put on a specific developers event other than just sort of the community collaboration or the contribution day. I don't
Well, in the past, MageConf was organized also by Magento itself, and now it's taken over by Edwix.
Okay.
So that was a Magento event that purely attracted developers, but I think on a practical part, it mostly attracted developers from the Ukraine because it was organized in Kiev.
Right.
Yeah, so it feels kind of like a different. It has a different vibe to it. That suddenly Adobe itself is organizing this developer live. But then for me the confusing part here is that it's not an Adobe developer conference. It's still really targeting the Magento developer ecosystem. And that's why in all of the notifications, actually the right wording of the event would be Adobe Developer Live column commerce.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Singling out basically that topic of Magento now being part of the Adobe community as well. So yeah, it's excluding. So this is kind of like my personal impression, but it's excluding other topics. So it's not going to dive into Photoshop development or stack development or Sensei development. It's really focused upon that commerce aspect made possible by Magento.
Yeah, and I think that Adobe does make a distinction between their cloud-based products and their sort of enterprise level products like Experience Manager, Target, Analytics, compared to Adobe Stock and Adobe Photoshop. I think there's a clear line between those two, and I think what we'll see is maybe Experience Manager would have a specific set of requirements from a developer that they would need to know to learn and to be developing on Experience Manager. And I would just add that Experience Manager was an open source project. I think it's called Apache Sling, that has turned into an actual Adobe product.
Oh, really?
So,
Cool.
yeah. So there is and I think I met the original architect on that. But there is a strong, there's a strong backwards focus on community and open source projects in Adobe. So
yeah. And that's kind of like where I see maybe the marketing of Adobe fail so far as well. Once actually the takeover was taking it in effect, once actually during conferences the announcements were being made, it was a lot of wording towards the large enterprise customers, towards agencies, but not necessarily worded in the way for developers. So as a developer myself, I got the impression that basically the takeover was not for me. And I would just simply hope for the ecosystem still to be the same thing. So Magento still being Magento in a couple of years' time. But now slowly you can see that Adobe is picking up on the developer part as well. And that's kind of like positive, and they're doing it now with the Adobe Developer Live conference. But I've also heard in different areas of Magento/Adobe that this is happening. For instance, a Magento Marketplace or community engineering in general. It's all falling under this Adobe Developer Program, and I'm not sure like what the wording is for the department that controls that, but it's basically all really focused towards developers in a nice way. So hopefully, yeah, we're going to see that new attitude or that strategy of Adobe suddenly during this conference.
Yeah, and maybe as we have a new name next month for our webinar called the Community Interviews, should it be the Adobe Community Interviews or should it be Magento? Because it would be interesting to interview some people who have been in the Adobe community as a developer for a long time to get their perspective. Because I think just as an agency, that you have a different perspective from somebody who's, say, in sales or marketing, who are trying to sell this product that you do as a developer who's actually making and implementing the features in the product. I think you get a much better sense of, you get a more realistic sense of where this product, where the community is at by interviewing the developers.
Yeah. Yeah, and it might be also good to point out that Adobe is kind of like a giant now taking over Magento, and Magento is just a really small part in the larger organization of Adobe, and that's for us kind of scary. And because of that, actually, a lot of people have been waiting for Adobe to take the next move. But it would be nice, actually, as a community, to take a move or make a move as well. So by simply naming it into the Adobe community interviews, or maybe Adobe office hours, or Adobe U open house, I don't know, like renaming it in a certain way and inviting indeed Adobe people, then at least we're also, how to say that, like stretching our hands, well, trying to shake hands with them basically.
Yeah, maybe we should call it the Adobe Fabric Community Talks, and that we're stitching our communities together with the fabric.
Yeah, to put a large X in there, yeah.
And then we'll call it Innovate. Our next conference will be Adobe Innovate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's move on.
All right. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that conference. That conference rolls on, and I can see here we have much more creative slides. So thank you, Madeline, for coming up with pictures of a tombstone and then pictures of a kid in the desert
kid,
that's buried in.
They would combine it. Yeah.
It's for Headless and then RIP Imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so it's like, got it. Sorry, I thought that it was a kid that's buried in the desert.
And then somebody buried it in a graveyard again. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with Imagine. So I think we've all seen that Imagine is canceled, or not canceled. It's going to go virtual for next spring, which is a little disappointing. But I think it's reality of where we're at in the world, that maybe everybody doesn't have the confidence that this virus will disappear at the end of the year, or on March or November 1st, or whatever the date is. And I think I saw that even whatever the vaccine is going to not be widely, it's not going to be available to every person in the world next year even.
Yeah.
So we're probably dealing with it for quite a while.
Well, that's maybe the thing, that regardless of how you feel about the virus, it is there, and for event organizers, suddenly you need to cope with that. And I see also that a lot of event organizers are simply just taking up the opportunity also to turn it into a virtual event instead. So I'm kind of like eager to see like how where Imagine is going to end up with. But do you know, actually, Imagine is still going to be organized then by Magento/Adobe, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it'll just be
Yeah.
part of Adobe Summit.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
think they have a day just like they do for Marketo. But I don't know how they're going to do it virtual. I would imagine that since we have so much time, that it'll be a lot more planning that goes into it, and
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes.
Well, and the Magento Association has now run a couple of conferences already, or well, not real big time conferences, but at least like well, hangouts. Let's but I think hangouts for thousands of people in the community through Hopin, I guess. So it could be that Imagine is using a similar platform. So yeah, it's not only about a boring Zoom call with two guys that know each other and then making silly jokes forth and back, but it's much more than that. So a multi-track, I guess, people chatting forth and back, multiple places where you can meet up virtually. So yeah, it's kind of cool to hear that it's virtual and it's suddenly open and available for everyone who's able to join.
Yeah. So it will be interesting. I know you're doing Reactacon virtually on Thursday. I'm going to be joining Meet Magento Indonesia.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, it's kind of like the new way of organizing events. That's basically it.
Yeah. So I think that I when this whole thing started, I did a little Twitter poll that said, what do you miss most? And certainly the one that was most missed was real interaction with people. It's always nice to see people in person. So I think that's something that everybody is going to look forward to once we have events again that can be met, that can happen in person.
Yeah,
I'm certainly looking forward to doing that. I know that we're going to be doing Meet Magento Mexico. That happens November 6th, and that is going to be virtual. And I'm guessing that Meet Magento India will also be virtual.
Cool.
Just because I can't imagine that we'll be able to travel that soon.
To India, yeah, and especially now that the numbers are going up that rapidly, especially in India. So yeah, and it's what you say. It's always nicer to meet each other in person, and that's not only for the community insiders like maybe us, like we can call each other friends, and then it's always great to meet each other in person. But even it's also good to meet other people and go out of your comfort zone because if it's an in-person event located somewhere physically. But yeah, that's not going to happen on the short term. So this year it's all going to be still virtual.
Yeah, and I think probably what makes it more difficult if we want to have a party. And for example, if you have your party, well, I guess it almost works. You could have your party at 9 p.m. and in the Netherlands, and that's only like 2 p.m. in Minneapolis. We could just start drinking early.
Yeah. So I'm going to organize Reactacon, as you said, in about 4 weeks' time right now. And there's going to be Eric Irway from Magento/Adobe as well. He's part of the Magento PW studio team. And last year I did a coffee with Eric Irway. So actually at the opening of the conference, people just dragged in a little table and chairs and a coffee pot and etc. in a rush just to sit down with him personally and have a coffee. But yeah, when he's about to drink his coffee, I'm about to drink my beer. So it's going to be a different thing because of the different time zones. Yeah.
Is that because it was at 8 a.m. your time?
Yeah, I saw you nipping from your iced tea before. So iced tea.
Yeah, my 500 milliliters of whiskey for the next hour.
Yeah.
All
So if
right.
Brent
So
is a little bit slow during this podcast,
yeah,
then
it's
it's
not the
because of that.
internet, it's my voice.
Yeah,
When I
exactly.
start. Okay,
Yeah.
let's keep moving. So Headless, let's quickly go over Headless and Headless. Things are changing, and they're always changing, right?
Yeah, so there's this little kid buried somewhere in the desert with only his head sticking out. Uh, but yeah, no. So things are on the move, yeah. So with Reactacon, I'm trying to keep up, or I try to make sure that the community on its own is also up to date on all of the different evolvements. But somewhere it's getting kind of like more chaotic every week or so. Not necessarily because Magento PWA Studio is not moving forward. So a lot of agencies or a lot of developers have thought in the past that Magento PWA Studio is almost coming to a standstill and nothing was happening. But actually, in the background, behind the curtains, basically the developers were just building kind of nifty features. And that's now slowly evolving into real cool features within the latest releases of PWA Studio. So in PWA Studio, the latest version, there's, for instance, extensibility. And slowly this brings up kind of like the opportunity for Magento extensions to be installed and then automatically do something within a PWA environment. But yeah, it's kind of like a similar thing that Vue Storefront and Deity and a couple of other PWA providers also did. Adding to that, Scandi is also one of those providers. But yeah, besides all of those standard PWA solutions, I'm also hearing more and more the opportunity of an agency just investing the right amount of time and then developing their own PWA solution from scratch, written in either React or Vue or theoretically something different. So the ecosystem is slowly getting the hang of it, but it doesn't mean that out of that chaos, only a couple of stable solutions pop up. It actually means that more and more solutions just pop up, and that the choice maybe gets more difficult as well.
Yeah, and I'm thinking in a past life, I remember a presentation you did. Was that at Magento India where you talked about your own version of it that you came up with overnight or something like that?
Yeah. So that was in a past life about 8 months ago or so, early February this year.
When we could meet in person.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was the last time we met up. And then I was jokingly talking about my own little Juga project. And I created that within a week time just to prove to myself like which points are easy to create and which points are harder to create within the PWA. But yeah, I wrote it from scratch just to prove that you could also build it instead of just relying upon Magento PWA Studio. But yeah, it was kind of like an educational prototype, me just doing something for a couple of weeks last summer. But I do believe that actually it's up to the agencies to determine whether they want to rely upon Magento for PWA Studio, or that they want to rely upon Vue Storefront or Deity or Scandi, or that they want to build something from scratch. So it's all depending on how an agency or maybe a developer is relating towards this upcoming move, the whole headless movement.
Yeah, I think the interesting part of there's two pieces to that. There's the agency side, and I think agencies have to look at the fact that it doesn't have to be any one thing. It could be PWA Studio, it could be a Vue Storefront, but it also could be a Drupal. Like if you have a Drupal site, you could attach Drupal to it headless. And I think we're gonna, like I said earlier, we'll see Adobe Experience Manager also become part of that puzzle.
Yeah.
Where some of that content is managed there. There'll be all kinds of bespoke different solutions that are out there. that may not even be a PWA version, but maybe something in a different platform on a different, however you want to build it, you could build it and they will come. I think the interesting thing then from a developer's point of view is, we're always trying to recruit developers, and a lot of times the first response from a developer is, oh, I'm not a Magento developer, I'm a React developer. Really? Okay, great. So, I think from your perspective, it would be interesting to say to a developer, like how much PHP you need to know and how much React you need to know, and where do those boundaries cross?
Yeah, so I'm actually quite busy with teaching developers get started with Headless, and it's both focused on Vue Storefront as well as Magento PWA Studio, but basically it's also about React in general and Vue in general. And it's slowly leading up to the point where I say that if a developer would ask me, which one do you prefer, Vue or React? Then I say like, well, that's something I keep a secret or so. But if you want to determine yourself which one you prefer, you have to get started with it. And that's kind of the same thing with Vue Storefront and with PWA Studio itself as well. By getting yourself into it, then you can make a better choice for which one you prefer best. And that's kind of like the difficulty that a lot of agencies are now struggling with. They're struggling with which way to go, React or Vue, which PWA provider. And I think that what needs to be said as well is that PWA is also just another solution besides actually the let's call it the traditional front end of Magento. So the PWA hype is good in some cases. So some projects benefit from going the PWA route, but some other projects don't. And it might still be that an agency therefore is not going headless, not going to do anything with React or Vue, not going into the Adobe ecosystem either, just sticking with the old traditional Magento stuff. And I think it's all fine, but it boils down to making the right choice. So we see a lot of changes in the ecosystem, and headless is just part of it. And I think like the real challenge is not necessarily once you get yourself into React development, how to deal with that, but it's more that choice that you need to make beforehand, which is, well, something that we could talk about endlessly, of course. But yeah, it's again interesting to see the current times and the struggling that agencies sometimes experience.
Yeah, and I think agencies are going to have to make some choices, because if the Magento front end is going to be completely deprecated, which I think it is, and I think they've already announced that, and just like a calligrapher meeting the graffiti artist, the writing is on the wall. The developer is going to have to choose a path in the future in which they're going to go down. So. Yeah. I'm interested in your view on what a traditional Magento front end developer, what do they have to add to their skill set in terms of, let's just talk about PWA Studio. What would they have to add to their skill set in order to become a proficient sort of let's call it a PWA developer in general, whether it's Vue or React? I don't think the difference is that much in those terms, but I think that that if you're going to choose PWA Studio, and let's just say Magento traditional front end goes away completely, either that developer is going to have to retool his or her skill set, or they're going to have to find a new job, right?
Yeah, well, but the difficulty is actually broader, I think. with Magento 1, we got used to this application that was a monolith. It was doing all of the things that you expected it to do. Because of that, actually, maybe it was serving its purpose. But once actually the features needed to be more enterprisey, or well, there needed to be more features added to Magento. With Magento 2, slowly the root began to not only build stuff within Magento, but also to rely upon external systems. So things like Varnish, Elasticsearch became more important. And I think the Headless story is part of that as well. And a lot of times, actually, a Magento backend developer is realizing this because a Magento backend developer is often dealing not only with Magento 2 backend development, with PHP and all of that XML shit, but it's also dealing with Varnish and with DevOps and with performance tuning in a larger server configuration. The universe is basically bigger than just Magento. And I think that the same counts for the front end as well. And a lot of Magento front enders got used to the old way that Magento 1 was working, but also with Magento 2. And they forgot about the fact that actually the front end technology was moving forward every week, every month with the release of new exciting features. And instead of actually embracing all of that, they just stuck to the old way, the Magento way. But yeah, that's basically where your point came in. The Magento 2 front end is now being deprecated, or it's going to be deprecated. And I don't really believe that the word deprecation is that bad. But I think it's much worse that actually the Magento 2 front end has been outdated from the very first start. Knockout, Require, it was already outdated when it came out, simply because front-end technology was just moving quicker than Magento 2 itself. So back to your question, like what should a Magento front-ender do to get him or herself into PWA Studio, or in generic, like a new front-end for Magento? I think it's don't focus on Magento, but focus on front-end technology, because if you're currently a front-end developer and you're working, you're happening to work with Magento itself, and you don't know what React and Vue and Angular and Svelte and all of these other things are all about. If you're working with CSS code in Magento, but you don't know about the latest developments in Less, you don't know about BEM and etc., you're not a real front-end developer. You're only doing a limited front-end stuff within Magento. So the real advice is just to expand your horizons, to learn more about what else is there in the front-end universe, and simply to realize that you can embrace that thanks to the headless approach that is becoming more and more mainstream.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that tends to happen is that if you are a front-end developer, you would turn over any work that has to be done in terms of modules to a back-end developer. And I feel like some of those lines are blurred now, where the front-end developer needs to know a little bit about how MVC works or something like that, so they can understand how the front end should be created, and even dipping into some of those features that are needed in terms of implementing their particular task with some back end.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like with PWA Studio, this is one of the exciting things for an agency. A front-end developer doesn't need to know anymore about the PHP object-oriented stuff. A front-ender only needs to know about React, and then start building React components that only query the GraphQL API of Magento to pull in data or to maybe push back data. But it's all about dealing with an API instead of actually dealing with how that API came to being. That's the stuff for a backend developer. And I think like the promise of going headless, or the promise of going headless with a solution like based upon React, is that you can really separate the front-end team and the back-end team from each other. And then it becomes easier to hire a React developer, because a React developer actually doesn't need to know really about Magento itself. It only needs to know about, well, the e-commerce basics of what Magento is all about. What is a simple product? What is a downloadable product? Here's a GraphQL API, and go forth and query things.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, that is a great example of how we can define those roles, and especially as we're moving forward and as planning, you know, sort of doing some planning of your team and how your teams are made up. It does make a lot of sense that that even front-end developers now should be focusing on how their front end interacts with an API, and not focusing on the monolith of Magento. I think the other thing that is planned with Magento is they're calling it isolated services. They're not calling it microservices, but I think the plan is to split out catalog and split out other things, similar to now the way they've split out search. But you would be able to deploy your Magento catalog independently of other features in Magento. And as I understand it, they're not going to dig into each individual service, but there'll be a group of services that are together.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of like a more in-depth story. So for an agency, I think it's less important to know how the service-oriented architecture of Magento is evolving. It's much more interesting for maybe the backend developers to learn more about the internals of Magento, and how in the end modules could be created only for the catalog part of the application and not the checkout part of the application. But I think that's still something that we can just wait and sit and wait for Magento to spread the word, like, hey, there's now Magento 2.5 or something, and it's including this service-oriented architecture, and this is the way to deal with it. To me, the headless approach is very different. It's basically no longer that we can sit down and wait for Magento to be offering us the headless solution. If you're waiting for Magento to provide you the headless solution, then you're missing the point. The whole point about going headless is that we make Magento/Adobe responsible for that backend system, but we need to make the decisions upon the front end ourselves. And to me, that's really the exciting thing, that there's a lot of change happening, and for sure, like Adobe Sensei and all of that other stuff that Adobe is bringing in is going to make it interesting to for an agency to sell more features or develop new cool shops with add-ons. But what we're seeing currently with the headless movement is that we also require kind of like an identity change of those agencies. An agency needs to determine for themselves whether they want to go the React way or the Vue way or the old way or the highway. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, we should keep moving here, and let's just. I think in the beginning we had some topics around the Magento Association. I don't think we have a specific slide for that, but let's just briefly go over that, and then we have some time for Q&A, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
So, did you attend the latest town hall? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was there, and I think it would be wise to simply join the town hall meetings to see what kind of plans are up, and maybe to some people it sounds all still really political and really high level without concrete things happening. But on the other hand, that's also needed if you want to transform the community from one way of organizing it into another way. So I think it's still intriguing. Yeah, and it's also nice to know actually that the Magento Association is slowly mixing itself into events as well. So they're organizing their own events. They're helping also out Reactacon, for instance, which I'm really proud of. And theoretically, they're just getting more and more involved with the community. But yeah, I have to admit myself that I don't know what they're up to these days, instead of actually maybe just organizing the next town hall meeting.
Yeah, so my my view on that was it feels like they should be farther along than they are, and I thought that the town hall was just a rehash of what they've rehashed for the last 2 years. But I do agree that it's exciting to see some progress now, and seeing what's going to happen. Excuse me, and I'm wondering if you know, I think the interesting part is Magento Association has a specific role. How is that going to play into the Adobe role? And are we going to see it, are we eventually going to see it become the Adobe Association or something? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, but think about how everything is rolling into Adobe, but Magento Association is still sitting there as Magento.
Yeah.
I think in some regards that gives us some, you know, some confidence and some, you know, something that tells us Magento is going to be there for a while. So, because it is moving forward in the way it's moving forward.
Yeah, and I think, like, regardless of your opinion on how it's progressing, because, well, it's always going to be progressing in a different direction than you would like yourself to be progressing to, and there's only one solution for that, and that's basically participate, become member of the board of the Magento Association, and then you can determine the route yourself. But I think regardless of the way that they're moving forward, I think the whole goal of the Magento Association was to make sure that it's a Magento Association, so it will not become an Adobe Association. So the very purpose of the Magento Association is actually to protect that thing that is actually making Magento, instead of that thing being absorbed on the long run by some kind of Adobe thing. And that's why I personally believe that I might disagree personally as well with a couple of the things that they're saying, with the way they're phrasing things, with the progress they make. But I don't really care that much about my own opinion in this regards. I just want this to succeed myself, because if the Magento Association is going to succeed, the Magento community is going to succeed. And then we're going to see this Magento name still within maybe the larger ecosystem of Adobe. But still, Magento is going to remain in there for many years to come.
Yep, I agree, and I think you've said it better than I could ever say it, except for the fact that I don't care about your opinion either.
Exactly.
Of course, I care about your opinion.
Well, oh, that's nice.
All right. Well, we should go into questions.
Yeah, I have some questions.
Go ahead, taking up much more time than I thought we'd take.
So I have some questions, and if the attendees have any more questions while I'm going through these, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. So first question that came in, it's about the certification. Will I need to change all my badges for certification?
I believe that the badges are changing, so you will. There's no hard requirement, but I think that the old badges are going away and the new badges are coming. So, I would say that yes.
And then another certification question: will I need to take a whole new test?
The tests, again, I think we kind of covered this in the very beginning. The tests are going to, again, stay the same for now. So I don't think there will be new tests, but for now, the tests are all exactly the same.
Okay. Is the Magento certification portal going away?
You know, that's a great question, and I don't know what's going to happen with the certification portal. I haven't heard anything about what's happening with that. So I can't answer that.
The other question was about your guys' name, now that Magento U is dying, but you kind of covered that.
You mean Brent?
Jisse.
Oh, they're both Jisse because
Oh,
it's
sorry.
probably hard to pronounce your name. So
That was the issue, yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are going to come up with a new name.
For
I
me.
think a good, I think a good topic for future is like developer expectations. I think that I think there is some confusion with, especially on from a leadership standpoint now, what is expected of a developer. But from a developer standpoint, I think there's also a little bit of confusion. And I would just add, because we do have Spanish-speaking developers on our team, there is a need to have sort of some of the ways now that the tests have been written are very heavy in language and how that language is written. So I think the old Magento tests were easier to pass for people that didn't speak English than the new ones. And again, this is just my only opinion. So be interesting to hear what people have to say about that. All right. Anything else, Madeline?
That's the only question I had, unless more people are typing Q&A and I'm not getting them yet.
All right, well, let's just give some plugs here. Jisse, what about your ReactCon? What are the date for that?
Yeah, so from October 13th to 15th, 3 days. It's going to be an online conference called Reactacon. It was held twice already in the Netherlands in 2018. And it was supposed to happen in June in the Netherlands as well, but then a certain virus came along. So it's going to be on October 13 to 15. 13 focused upon Vue, 14 focused upon React, 15 focused upon everything else that was not discussed yet. And yeah, slowly the timetable is also coming to realization, as in I'm trying to have all of the speaking slots take place actually from the European afternoon towards the European evening, so that it basically becomes something for the US people also to join. That makes it a little bit harder for Indian people to join as well, because then they have to stay up late. But yeah, that's kind of like a decision we needed to make.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the URL really quick.
Reactacon.org.
Excellent.
As simply as it is.
Great.
Yeah, and maybe also a nice pointer that in a couple of days on Thursday, this Thursday, we're going to see each other again at Meet Magento Indonesia.
Yes, I think I'm speaking at 9:30 p.m. Indonesian time, which is 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time in the US.
You didn't fly to Jakarta, right? Or you did?
I did not. Yeah.
No, you did not.
I made a silly joke. Yes.
Okay. Now we get the joke. Okay.
Yeah. Nobody gets.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So then, Madeline, you're organizing Meet Magento Mexico City.
Yep. Then we have Meet Magento Mexico, another virtual event, of course. And you can be looking out for the sponsor doc, which will be coming out either today or tomorrow. If you're interested in sponsoring, and then also tickets are free. So it should be just a quick event. It's not going to be 3 days long. It's just going to be a couple of hours on November 6th in the afternoon.
And yours is continuous 3 days, right? It's just 3 solid days, 24 hours a day.
24 hours, nonstop.
Yeah. I'm reacting well to that. And then we haven't made a decision. I think that Meet Magento India, which last year was February 1st, and I think this year is January 31st. I think that it'll most likely be virtual. So we should probably plan on that sometime next year. All right, well, this is where the catchy closing music starts that we're going to add in later. And maybe some nice Dutch guitars or something like that. But yeah, thanks for joining, and I appreciate everybody. We had quite a few people on today, so was great. And we look forward to next month. And I don't know, do we have a date yet, Madeline?
Oh yeah, hold on. Let me look. It's on October 13th.
All right, October 13th is the next one, and it's going to be called Adobe Community Interviews. What do you think?
Apparently, yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, we'll have a new one
Let's
for
go
November.
for it.
Yeah. All right. Great. Thanks, everybody. Have
Thanks
a
for
good day.
listening.